All right, welcome back to Dad's Guide to Thrive, a series of interviews with real dads from right around the world where we talk about how are we doing, what are we struggling with, and what are we doing to manage our struggles, to improve who we are, and to show up the very best we can in our lives. So today I am super excited in this episode to be joined by Todd Giannattasio. I practiced his last name. Todd is from New Jersey in the US, and he's a veteran marketing expert. He's been featured by some big names from Entrepreneur, Forbes, Huffington Post. He has a range of proven systems he's used to grow brands, generate leads, and increase sales in our constantly evolving digital world. And man, that must just be like a hamster wheel of constant change, that whole digital marketing gig. He's certified in sales and marketing from some very wonderful and prestigious organizations, including HubSpot, digitalmarketer.com, and the Jordan Belfort Straight Line Sales and Persuasion System. He's been a featured speaker. He's been working in digital comms and marketing since 2003. So coming up on 20 years in the industry, that's pretty impressive, particularly with how fast it moves.
Sheesh.
I'm really excited to have you.
Man, that's the first time that that's the first time that I heard the 20 years phrase coming up. Man, oh boy. It's good.
So let's use that to dive straight into what are you struggling with? Well, feeling like I'm old in this industry.
Right. Oh man. But it's been a fun ride, and a big journey. And just like dad life, digital marketing constantly changing, always new struggles to keep up with. And, when you become a dad, that's what happens. You take on this whole new identity that you're unprepared for no matter what. And, you just do your best every day and try to adapt and keeps you on your toes,
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's, from my experience of being a parent is a lot like being in small business. Whatever inner game stuff, like whatever internal beliefs or conflicts or unresolved stuff that you've got going on under the surface, become a parent or become a small business owner, or for those of us crazy enough to do both at once, and it'll bring all of that stuff to the surface. It'll be like, right, you thought you dealt with some stuff? Okay, let me bring up what you really need to look at. So what I wanted to get stuck into with our conversation is really just a bit about your background with your family and the work you're doing right now. But then on top of that, like, what are some of the things that you personally have struggled with as a dad, in your field, in digital marketing? I know you've got some young daughters. So yeah, tell us a bit about your family setup and the work you're doing and, how that's sort of led into this conversation of being real about what's going on.
Yeah. So I quit my job in June of 2011, my corporate job, to start my own company. And 6 weeks later, approximately, is when I met my would-be wife. Oh, wow. So she has only known the entrepreneur version of me. So I lucked out in the timing because, a lot of the questions that people have are like, if you have a significant other, when you go to quit your job and start a business, that, there's that whole dynamic. So for me, I was young and single, and I just, jumped ship and did my own thing. And then we met, and, the rest is history. So that was all great. And we've been together since, so that was in 2011. So we've been together for that long. We got married in 2014. We had our first daughter in 2016, Taylor, who's 5.5 now. And we have a 2-year-old, Haley, which is when we were pregnant with the second one. We had to move out. We had a tiny apartment with the one kid. So we had to get a house and move out a little bit more into the suburbs. And literally we unpacked the last box, and Michelle laid in the bed and said, "Oh, boom, I think my water just broke. We got to go to the hospital." So it was literally minutes. Like, we unpacked the last box in the which was the baby's room. And that was 2 minutes later. We're in the car driving down to the hospital.
Oh, my goodness.
So the timing worked out perfectly. We cut it close, but it worked out.
That's amazing. Now, you did mention in a bit of a chat before we got started that you met your wife on the beach. So I've just This to me sounds like the kind of thing you see in a movie. I'm just really curious. Just tell me a bit more of that story. How did you meet each other?
Yeah. So like I said, I had just quit my job, and she's a teacher, so she had summers off. And so we both had houses down at the beach with our respective group of friends separately at the time. And so we were out at the bar on a Sunday night, which could only be for really entrepreneurs and teachers, right? So it was destined for us to connect there. To be honest, as the night is a little bit fuzzy for both of us. But, obviously we connected on a level where we had each other's full names saved in our phones. So we knew it was something legit. Uh-huh. And, especially with a name like mine, she had it spelled correctly. So it was,
good. That's always positive.
So, we just, we hit it off from there. Yeah. So, and then it just developed from there. But yeah, it was great. And, to think it was one of those things, and I forget her side of the story beforehand, but like one of her friends was supposed to like catch the train and miss the train. So that's why they were still there that night, like a whole very kind of serendipitous opportunity. But I also think no matter what the situation, if we met that night or another night, we were destined to meet and be together regardless. So that was how it happened that night. In another universe, we met a different day, a different way.
Yeah, but, like at a cafe outside of your office,
kind of stuff I believe in,
or something, right? Like it's
right.
Just, you never know,
right? Yeah,
it's a whole thing of like there's no accidents, right? So, and I mean, you and I have had this. We met through Jim Fortin's TCP program, and that really
exactly
when you dig into that stuff and you start getting into the quantum realm and thinking about the universe and manifesting and all these things, it's like, whew.
Right.
First of all, heady conversations, really interesting. But second of all, there's no such thing as coincidence anymore. You just go, well, it's just all meant to roll out the way it's rolling out. So who knows?
Yep, exactly. And so whoever's listening right now, the messages that you're about to hear from wherever this conversation goes, they were meant for you at the time that you're listening. So, pay attention.
100%. So really what I'm hearing is you've got a great relationship with your wife. You have two beautiful daughters. You've already encountered some kind of curveballs of having to relocate the family just prior to having your second. And obviously thrown into the mix is all of the inherent uncertainty that goes with being an entrepreneur, having your own company and relying on what you do to attract and generate clients and revenue for yourself. It's not like you're getting a handout of a paycheck every fortnight or every month. You really need to, the buck.
Yeah.
I used to say the buck starts and stops with me. If I do nothing, I get no cash. So I got to do something, right?
Yep.
So I'm
exactly.
So I'm interested to hear from you. Like, what are some of the things you've found challenging? What are some of the challenges or the struggles you've faced as a dad, as a husband, as an entrepreneur, juggling these three things? Well, probably like five things. Your wife, your two daughters, that's three, your business and your own self, How do you manage it all, and what are some of the things you've come up against?
It's crazy. I think something that hit me really hard when we had our first child. So at the time, we lived in a 2-bedroom apartment. So we had our bedroom, then we had a second room, which was like, it was my office when I first started my company before I had gotten a real office. And that's where I had all my sports stuff up on the walls, my autograph stuff and everything. And then as we got ready to have the baby and that turned into the baby's room, all that stuff came down and it's gone. And like, the apartment, especially not being that big, it's like the apartment is just kind of decorated generically for the family or whatever, and my wife has all her stuff in the bedroom, and like it was almost like my whole existence just got like wiped out. And I didn't think about it at the time when we were like changing the rooms over or anything, and like I almost only realized it in hindsight, where I just realized like, man, I feel like I feel like I don't exist anymore in the, like this the old person literally is gone. And not even just like at the identity level, like now you're a dad and you have a family and that whole thing shifts. But then like physically to see like my whole physical existence like is gone too. And it was like it was like very sweeping to just like clear that stuff out. And especially, that was well before TCP. So I wasn't as, in touch and self-aware of these stories and interpretations and everything that we learn about from Jim and the community. And so, like I said, I kind of figured that out in hindsight, where I was like, whoa, that was a bigger deal than I realized. And no wonder I felt so heavy all the time and lost.
Yeah.
And that's not something that I really hear, even still now, 5.5 years later. It's not something I really hear dads talking about or people talking about when it comes to, becoming a dad, and of course, everybody in the mainstream or masses or whatever, you want to talk about how, I love being a dad. It's great. I love my kids. It's amazing. It's like, but it's definitely an adjustment to become. It's through TCP we learn about our identity, and we live more intentionally around creating this new identity that we want to be. But when you become a dad, it's not really your choice. It just kind of you're forced into it. And I think a lot of times as you prepare for it, you think so much about like, okay, do we have enough diapers and wipes and all the milk bottles and the milk warming machine and all these like other things that like you don't think about, like the mental and emotional, like you're not prepared mentally and emotionally for this whole, like that old Todd is gone.
Right.
And there's nothing really you could do about it.
It's so interesting. Like I remember.
So that was definitely something for me. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember vividly having these chats with people, like, when it's your first child, you do these classes, like how to prepare through the pregnancy, how to get ready for the birth, what's going to happen at the birth, how to be a supportive partner for what your wife or your girlfriend or what have you is going through, all this stuff. But what I found like to be the biggest gap is they don't tell you what happens once the kid arrives. Like that whole section afterwards, you're like, what the hell? What am I going to do now? Now I've got this person. They're like, see you, you're on your own. So there's that. But then what you've raised here is another really important conversation, which is the part of like, as a man, so much of who we are, who we grow to be, to become the person who can, attract a partner to want to build a family with, right? Like that whole person who we end up as there is one version of us. And then the version of us that maybe starts their own business along with that and has to kind of, drive the activity to market and sell what we do and fulfill for our customers and clients and all that. But then, like you say, it's so amazing that I've never really reflected on that, just how much we have to evolve and become a brand new person all over again. And it's almost like, in a way, we let go of, or we kind of almost, I feel like we maybe need to grieve the loss of that version of us that came from like our early, mid, late 20s, where we're like, I'm just kicking around, I'm going to the bar and I'm having fun with my girl and playing sports and attending games and collecting, memorabilia and signed. Yeah. I don't know who the basketball team is you follow there, but you know what I mean? Like it's that.
Yeah. But we're the Knicks, the Knicks. First place Knicks as of right now, Solid. That's right, yeah.
So, so that whole thing, like it's so true. So there's like a grieving process as dads that we almost need to have for that. And I mean this with love. Like it's not like a regret-filled thing, but it's just that we need to acknowledge the shift in who we are and who we need to become to wear these new hats. So it's a really, really interesting way to frame it. That's awesome. So
yeah. And the more aware you can be about it and to be intentional about it, the better it's going to be, right? Like I think most people, you just skate through it and you're having a difficult time and you're having a difficult time, and then you just kind of push through. And then you look back and maybe in hindsight, you figure these things out. And then, you have to go through, whether it's just therapy or, over beers with your friends or through programs like TCP, like you start to figure these things out in hindsight. But if like almost if there were some kind of ceremonious moment where it was like, okay, this is a new identity and a new person, and you can recognize it and you can, like you said, grieve. I think that, that would be super helpful.
Right. Like I'm curious from your perspective, you spoke about this, first of all, that this is not something that you, even 5-6 years later from when, your wife was pregnant and you sort of went through this shift of identity. And for me, it's like my daughter's 15, my son's 11. So it's a long time back for me, but I didn't really personally, I didn't experience it as much with my first as I did with my second. Like that to me was a big cataclysm of stuff, which
Really?
yeah. So I ended up with like really quite severe postnatal depression after my son was born because things just changed so much with the second child. You know, the dynamic shifted, the sleep was just ruined. I was at a very different place in my business and in my life. The commitments and the stakes were much higher. And I was doing all this extra physical stuff like training for marathons and triathlons. So I kind of was just pushing in every direction all at once, you know, and there was no sanctuary.
Yeah, seriously.
There was no rest. There was no downtime. And I just went and just bottomed out. But now looking back on it, I can identify for me what that moment was where I really had to go, okay, something ain't right here. But for you, you know, what was there a pivotal moment? Was there a point in time where you sort of sat down with yourself in a way, you know, metaphorically sat down with yourself and went, all right, what's going on here? You know, I don't feel like the same guy. I need to kind of recognize and unpick what's going on here. How did that come about, and where were you in your life? And, you know, tell us a bit about that if it was like a single event.
I don't remember like a single event happening, but I remember, so, you know, my family, we're very much diehard sports fans, like even my wife more so before the kids. But my family, we've had season tickets to the New York Football Giants since 1950. So we've been going to the games forever.
Wow.
And then like that used to be Sunday morning, 7 a.m. I'm at the gates at the stadium, drinking liquor, partying all day, come home, you know, go to the game, get home late at night, crash, work on Monday. Like now all of a sudden, like that was like really a big part of who I was as a person. Like everyone knows, like if you're going to the Giants game, Todd's over and like, you know, Todd and his family are tailgating over there. That's where you go if you're going to the game. And then like all of a sudden it was like, I can't go spend 12 hours getting drunk at the stadium anymore, right? Like, and so those things start to like disappear. And now we're at a point where my daughter, you know, she was 2 years ago, pre-pandemic, when she first started playing sports, it was on Sunday mornings. And so we ended up switching, like, instead of tailgating, now we're going to soccer practice in the morning, and then I'm going to the stadium to watch the game and then coming straight home. And now we're at a point where we just go really briefly. So like that whole part of like I was to myself and everyone who knew me, like diehard Giants fan, I'm at the stadium every game, to now it's just like a totally different person. And you don't realize how strong these different parts of our lives like make us who we are until they're no longer there.
Right.
And it was a huge struggle. Well, I should say the decision to not tailgate at the Giants games was an easy one. Like to me, it was like, oh man, Taylor soccer's on Sunday mornings. All right, that's what we're doing. And then I'll go to the game afterwards. Like I didn't really struggle with the decision itself.
Sorry to interrupt, but so for someone not from the US, what, like I know what tailgating means over in Australia, but in your context, what does tailgating mean?
Sure. Yeah. So tailgating is basically the game starts at like 1 o'clock or 4 o'clock. You get to the game at 7 or 8 a.m. You set up a tent and tables and a bar and the grill, and you're grilling and drinking in the parking lot before the game. That's what tailgating is here in the US. So I don't know, what is that similar to what you guys have going on?
Right. I think I understand. Yeah, look, for me personally, I've never been one to get completely rabid and excited and passionate about sports to like go to every home game or anything, you know, like I used to see the odd game of basketball here and there, but like where I grew up was a long way from the city where the games were held. So it was never really that much a part of my upbringing. But I can certainly relate to like my stepdad. There's a game over here, like rugby league football. It's similar to rugby union. It's a very, very popular one in Sydney. And my stepdad grew up and kind of raised us on rugby league. So we'd be watching the games at home nearly every Sunday. And there'd be, like when it was finals playoffs, it was always, like you say, there'd be a grill, there'd be beers, there'd be people over, it'd be a big, big community gathering. So I do get that. Yeah, I was trying to work it out. Like,
exactly.
What does he mean by tailgating? Okay, cool. So I get that. So it sort of becomes like, so by the time the game starts at 1 or at 4, you're already pretty loaded, right? Like you've had there, a good sort of 6 or 8 hours of sitting there getting drunk. And,
exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's a good time, but those days are behind me now. And so, like I said, the decision to go to Taylor's soccer instead of tailgating was an easy one. I didn't really struggle with making the decision, but then once I did, I was like, it was again like that grieving process, almost like, oh man, I like this person who I was. So I started, for 20 years, once I was like kind of like of age to start going regularly, with my dad, and 20 years of tradition, and also that part of it that it was with my dad too. Like it wasn't just like a thing I did with my friends, but like it's the tradition with my dad and his dad, and so it was like a grieving process almost. Like I had to recognize and say like that part of me is gone. It's and this is all very, the stuff that we learn in TCP, not to keep bringing up TCP, but it is obviously a major part of my life. My wife's in it too. So we're like, we're hardcore committed, to the program, but it is real, like recognizing all these stories and your identity, your subconscious identity and all that stuff. And, so when you look back on life and, we go through all these exercises where you write your stories out and you start seeing these and identifying them like, oh man, that was a different person that needed grieving. And I love how you put it that way. Yeah.
I think it's a concept that has been made really aware to me through the pandemic, right? Like there's been a lot of grieving that has needed to occur in a lot of different ways for parts of our life that will no longer be the way they used to be. What we as parents imagined for our kids, the world they were going to grow up in was kind of the same as the world we grew up in, but that's not really the reality, and what we held true about, tomorrow is going to be kind of the same as today with a few little tweaks here and there. But like we've all lived through the last 18 months where we don't even know what today is going to be like, let alone what tomorrow is going to be like. Like it's constantly changing goalposts. Resetting our own expectations, managing that process of like you say, you need to sort of just gently let go and release with love those parts of ourselves that need to fall away so that we can, come back to who we are. And I think part of it for me, absolutely grieving, right? But then part of it too, and this is maybe something if you've experienced this, I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on. There's like a leaning into faith or trust that even though we don't quite know what's coming, it's going to be okay. That we're going to be able to look after the people we love, that we're going to be able to be a decent person and our kids are going to grow up with life experience that they're meant to have, that they will enjoy and they will grow from and they will have fun with, that sometimes our own expectations. Well, I mean, God, all of us who have done any processing of our own daddy issues would all be able to attest to this. The expectations that get placed on us as children and then the expectations we perhaps unconsciously place on our kids as parents, we need to just gently ease back on those and release them so that our kids and us can have a more open and free relationship to just be who we are. What's your experience of that?
I think that's... Yeah, I think you're right. The open and free experience is key, and it's the thing about life. One of my favorite things. If you're familiar with Ryan Holiday, he's like he's an author. He has the Daily Stoic. His last few books are all about Stoicism. But I heard an interview with him one time where he just said, I don't know if we can curse on this show, but he says life is an effing paradox. And we have to hold contradictory ideas at the same time sometimes. And it's an impossible thing to do and feel, but that's what it is. And one of the things too, like going through TCP and like being a parent and thinking to myself, okay, I don't want to put any negative or whatever kind of stories or limitations on my children. So I'm super conscious about that. And I'm like, how do we properly lead and whatever and behave ourselves to be good parents and allow our children to become the best versions of themselves? But then and feel like, oh my God, every single thing I do matters. Every word I say, they're listening to and they're imitating, and it's making a subconscious impression. But then also at the same time, like you just said, nothing matters and everything's going to be fine anyway. But it's like everything matters so much, but also it doesn't matter at all.
Right.
And both of those things exist at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's messes with your head.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a real mind mash. I think that's so cleverly put, right? And I've experienced this as a dad where I look back at who I was in previous versions of myself, right? When I was at my worst of my depression, when my son was born, the experience that my daughter had, that my wife had, that my son had of me at that point in my life, took me a long time to make peace with that, because I knew that I know now that's not who I was wanting to be. But I also know with compassion and with grace, I was just doing the best I could. It wasn't real good. It was a pretty shit best, but it was the best I could do at that time in that moment with the tools I had, right? So I think that's the thing that I've really found comforting as a parent, to go, look, I'm going to get shit wrong. I'm going to make mistakes. I'm going to F it up. My kids are going to probably have to go through their own route of therapy and self-development and evolution and growth and what have you. But at least I've normalized that process for them. So they see what it looks like to be someone who constantly dives into your own crap, to work it through, to grow, to be a better person,
And I think that's the best thing that you could do. And I love that you just articulated that and brought that to the forefront for everybody listening and for myself, where that's, accepting, sometimes things are what they are. So our emotions can get the best of us. We might make the wrong decisions and react different ways, but to just constantly be open to reflecting and improving and being self-aware, I think is huge. And sitting in the gratitude for what we have, like you said, maybe it wasn't the best job in the whole world, but it was the best job that you could do at the time. And that's something I try to think of every day too, especially when we all have so much going on and there's so many distractions and things pulling us in different directions. It's hard to be present sometimes. And, I spent a lot of time for the first few years of being a dad where you're sitting there physically, but mentally you're still thinking about a business thing or something else, or you're not there, right? And so now what I've started to really sit in gratitude with is if I'm on the couch or at the dinner table and looking at my 2-year-old or my 5-year-old and think to myself, there's literally nowhere else in the entire world at this moment that I would rather be than right here with my wife and my daughters. And then and I let that kind of try to wash away anything else that I'm thinking about. And I'm like, literally, there's nowhere else I'd rather be in the whole world. How amazing is that? And how thankful I am for that moment in the moment. And that's something that I try to bring myself back to when I feel myself kind of drifting away a little bit, is this is it. Or if my daughter, a lot of times I pick her up from school after that, they got the aftercare where they watch them until a little later. And I pick her up and she says, can we go on the playground? And my knee-jerk reaction was no, we can't. And then she fight, and then we go for a few minutes.
Dinner and bath time and all the stuff, right? Yeah.
Right. Exactly. And then only just a couple weeks. I mean, she just started school in September, so she's only been in school for 2 months now. But only a couple weeks ago, I realized enjoy that. It's 8 minutes that we do it. It's not even a long time. And I'm this is why, this is the moment. These are the moments that we need to enjoy and be present for. And so now I'm just yep, throw your stuff in the car. Let's let's run. We'll go to the playground for 10 minutes. And I just try to be present and grateful in those moments and enjoy them while they're here.
Because you're right. That's the stuff that the kids are going to remember, that you made the time and that you connected with them at their level with what their interests were. I mean, geez, 8 minutes, 10 minutes, like you could get stuck in traffic for that long, like it's not that big a deal.
Right,
really,
exactly.
So, especially in Jersey, I'm sure. But so that whole idea is, it's beautiful. And that really, like, being present and being grateful, so powerful. Like, to me, those are two things that I always return to, because I know that, and I've learned that when I'm really, really present in the moment, then, when I'm really fully here, I'm not thinking about all the coulda, woulda, shoulda in the past, all the stuff that I simply can't change. And that's where I was when I was really stuck in my depression. I realize now, reflecting back, to me, that's what I was. I was just always in shame around, I should have done this differently. I should have been better. I should have been this, that, the other, shoulda, coulda, woulda, all the things I wish I could have changed. And then the flip side is, which often as business owners and entrepreneurs, we sometimes catch ourselves in as well, or leaders in work in corporates that, where we have an important role to play and we have a lot of responsibility. The other side of that is spinning off into the future about all the maybes and the what ifs of what might happen and how am I going to have, trying to pre-plan and pre-control and all of that, every future event. And in both cases, it takes you right out of the moment. It takes you away from connection. It takes you away from the people that really matter. Like if you sit down with any dad, and for any dad listening, if you were to write down what are the highest priorities in your life, I bet top 5 is always going to have health and family, right? Whether that means your kids individually, your partner, or some combination of that, like our own health and our own family, they're always going to be up there. And so where do you get the chance to connect with people and to be at our best? It's in the present moment, and it's when we can really appreciate all of the abundance and amazingness that we have in our life. So that, man, I just wanted to kind of echo and reinforce that, because I think it's so powerful to really think about, for all of the dads listening and the mums, anyone listening, when we can be really present and really grateful and start to kind of mesh those together. So in those present moments, it's great. So and
one of the tools that one of the tools that comes up in TCP is the alter ego. And it is the alter ego. And there's a book by a guy named Todd Herman called Alter Ego, which dives a lot deeper into it. And, in TCP, we talk about like this one alter ego version where we want to step into. But when you dive deeper into the idea, it's really that we have all these different identities. And there is the entrepreneur version of ourselves, or the work part of ourselves, and then the personal, and then the spouse, and then the dad, right? And one of the things, is to recognize that we have these different identities and own them. And while I don't have, like, in the book, Todd Herman talks about, like, when he gets home, like when he's at work, he's got an alter ego. And then when he gets home, he switches off and he turns into, like, in his head, he turns into Mr. Rogers to be with his kids, right? Like super friendly and all that kind of stuff.
Puts on a cardigan,
and so right, exactly. Yeah, his house shoes or whatever. But while I don't have like an alter ego specifically as like for dad mode, I do think of it as like dad mode, where I'm like, all right, especially now working from home. Obviously, after the pandemic, got rid of the office. Now, no reason to have an office anymore. So now it's really like, all right, once I pick her up when we get home, like it's dad mode time. Like, don't worry about what else is going on. Put your phone in the other room so your notifications don't bother you. Like, enter into dad mode. And then at the same time, like, trying to spend time with my wife, where we try to, Friday and Saturday night, we tell our daughter it's date night for mommy and daddy, even though we're not going anywhere. We're just downstairs, like, watching TV and having a drink or whatever. But like, we tell her, like, you have to go to sleep. You can't keep getting out of bed every 20 minutes and keep calling for us, because we need to spend time together. And like, that's that's our date night, and that's like hangout time. And, it's those moments too, where we haven't put ourselves, we don't put the pressure on ourselves to make it some kind of fancy, overcommitted thing, where it's like, we just want to hang out on the couch and like watch a show that we both enjoy, where we could decompress and do that kind of stuff, and so being able to do that, and just make sure that you have time for those things before they drift away too far apart, is super important.
Right. I mean, it's so often something I've heard from family, friends, from people I know through sports teams. The part of the challenge of becoming a dad is juggling all of the different priorities, juggling our own personal needs. I mean, a lot of the time we don't even know how to articulate or prioritize ourselves, right? So that's a whole other can of worms. But the bit of really nourishing and nurturing our relationship with our partner, with the other parent in the family, and for those people listening who are in single sort of parent situations, I honor and respect you. And I also know that for those of us in relationships, it's one of those things where we need to constantly tend that garden, right? Like we need to make sure we are watering the relationship, tending to it, caring for it. And so like you said, it doesn't need to be a great big production. It doesn't need to be a candlelit dinner and like a fine dining restaurant every week where you kind of hire a babysitter and go out for 8 hours and see a show and do all the things and spend a fortune. Like it can literally be in your comfy track pants, with your bed socks on, sitting on the couch, eating nachos and drinking beer.
Exactly.
Like it can be that lo-fi, that sort of easy. But what it is, it's about being present in that part of our life with that person. Because when you make the choice to become a parent, it doesn't mean you make a choice to stop being a partner and a lover and a friend and, all of that. So those things need to be made time for too. I think that's really, really powerful. And I mean, on top of all of that, it's really, really great that you're demonstrating to your kids what a healthy relationship looks like, where that relationship has its own time scheduled, right? Where you go, you know what? We love you and we want to play games all the time. We want to hang out with you. However, so that we can be better mummy and better daddy, we need to actually make time for the two of us because we love each other. And, now that you're here and with our work and everything else, we don't always get as much time to be together as we used to. So it's healthy, right? Because kids then go, okay, so, I'm really important, I'm really valuable and I'm really loved and I'm not the center of the universe and mum and dad need to spend time together. And that becomes, monkey see, monkey do, right? Like those sorts of things shape who our kids become, what they look for in future relationships themselves. Like it's only healthy. It's all good.
Yeah, exactly. And last but not least, certainly not least, is really the first most important thing is like just recognizing the need for like loving yourself and self-care too, like, and making sure taking the time, like, we were talking offline about like playing basketball and stuff and like something in my neighborhood, there's this playground for the kids and there's like a half basketball court there. And so I've started like, because I love playing basketball and I'd never ever get to play. I just started like, this is a lucky thing being owning your own business where if I got an hour open in my schedule during the day, I'm just going to hop over to the court and shoot around for 15 minutes by myself. Like, because that's just something I love. I enjoy doing. Right. Gets me, it's also therapeutic to do some mindless stuff that's not at the computer and whatever. But like just taking out something to recognize. I think there's two parts of it, actually. There's one, I enjoy doing that for myself, right? And it serves no purpose other than just kind of playing and doing something I enjoy. But the other part is just the fact that I'm telling myself subconsciously I'm important enough to do something for. And again, like this is not anything extravagant. Like I'm spending 15 minutes shooting basketballs, right? But just again, like the same way you said, like how our children see us and see how we're treating each other. It's like that same exact relationship with ourselves where like I'm showing myself and acknowledging myself. You're important to have some time too, to be acknowledged and valued, So
good. I think that's especially powerful too when we think about, for those of us who grew up with one of our parents or both of our parents potentially, where like, the archetype of, or the stereotype of a dad is the guy who's always working and who, gets home from work exhausted and doesn't have any time on the weekends because he's in the yard or in the shed and just always doing stuff and not always present and here and connected and open and available. Or the mum who, and I mean, I'm stereotyping here based on my own experiences, but like the mum who constantly does everything for everybody else and gets hardly any sleep, and she's always doing the housework and the chores, and she's never taking time for herself. And it's almost like previously, maybe in previous generations, it was like a sign of, like a badge of honor of like, I'm a martyr to my family's needs. You know,
Yeah,
like,
for
I will
sure.
gladly punish myself, drive myself into the ground, exhaust myself, wear myself out for everyone else's benefit. And you know, we, as kids, we sponge all that up. We learn and absorb all of those patterns and behaviors and beliefs. And then suddenly we find ourselves as parents doing the same thing and showing that to our kids. And like, wait a minute, that's not healthy.
And I'll tell you what, that's also partially, this wasn't a directly thing that led us into TCP, but it was exactly what you just said. My wife doing all that stuff. And me also feeling like I feel like I'm doing everything. She feels like she's doing everything. And there's still, quote unquote, everything left undone. And now you have two burnt out parents who just feel like we're just hustling nonstop all the time. But we are nowhere near where we want to be in life. So I'm like, let's pause, because something's not right here. If we're both putting out this much energy all the time and we're always feeling tired and worn out, and we're not even reaping the benefits of that energy output, like we need to change something, you know? Like, and so now, of course, my wife is in, I think this is her third round of TCP. This is my second. She started one round before me, but you know, you learn about these things, and you learn to kind of, you said earlier, you know, like letting go of certain things, and just, it's really about clearing out and allowing prosperity into your life, you know, and letting things be easy, because again, the stories that we absorbed as children from generations, it's, you have to, you know, work really hard at everything if you want to get anywhere. And you know, that's not necessarily true. But then you just find yourself working hard for no reason.
Yeah, because it's the habit. I mean, to your point about prosperity, right? Like that's a great word. And it obviously, straight away, for probably a lot of people, it talks to money and wealth and financial prosperity. But when we think a little bit more broadly about that, what does it mean to be prosperous? You know, to have a sense of, you know, beautiful well-being and health, to be able to have really rich, really meaningful and connected relationships, to have an abundance of time, you know, the ability in our schedule to go, you know, I'm just going to take the day off. I'm going to sit on the couch and watch movies because that's really nourishing for my soul. Or I'm going to go be in nature for a whole day with the family and just take a walk and a picnic or like whatever, right? But those things, and this kind of touches again on that present moment gratitude, right? But those things of just being prosperous, it doesn't necessarily mean having a truckload of cash in the bank. It might mean prosperous in many, many other ways. So I love that. Look, we are the kind of guys, I think.
Something I'm curious about.
Sorry, go on.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, we could quite easily just riff on this for another 24 hours straight, right? Like I have this problem.
I know, we really could.
With really like-minded dads. Just like, yeah, we got some stuff, but man, we can just talk and connect and riff, and it's great. I do want to respect your time and our listeners, so I'm keen to draw slowly to a close, but you were about to raise something. So tell me what you're going to say, and then we'll kind of get into the wrap-up.
I'm very curious for dads who are not entrepreneurs, where I don't know if this is generational or just archetype, because as an entrepreneur, we learn to value time over money. Where, you know, there's a saying where it's like, first you work to get the money, then you use your money to buy your time back, right? Like you trade time for money, and then you trade your money for time, and then you trade your money for more money. But so there's things as a dad where I'm like, I'm not going to mow my lawn, because I don't need to spend 2 hours mowing the lawn that I could spend 2 hours with my kids, because I recognize that time. Whereas opposed to like my dad freaked out when I told him that we were hiring a landscaper, and why wouldn't I mow my own lawn? And that's because like he values the hard work, whereas I value the the free time and
Right.
spending that time regardless if I'm with my kids or not. Like, I just don't, why would I spend time mowing the lawn when I could spend time doing something else? And I don't know if that's a generational thing or if that's like an entrepreneur mindset where you're like, you know, I'm not going to spend time on these types of house chores that have, you know, quote unquote low value.
See, my read on that personally is,
or at least low value to me.
It's it's a bit of both, because my dad had his own company. He used to build houses, like residential homes for people, right through his life. So he worked for himself for like 45 years, right? So he was always in that mindset.
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, of like entrepreneurship, running his own thing, you know. However, the exact same thing when I said, man, I'm getting someone else to mow my lawn. I'm getting someone else to clean my house because I got better things to do with my life. I want to go to the beach. I want to soak up the richness of this experience called being alive, not doing it. And it shifts and changes. And I think this is the piece, you know, you spoke a little bit about intention, right? So for him, the concept of his upbringing, I think, was that there's two types of people. There's the people who mow their lawn, and then there's the people who we look down upon and sneer at, who pay somebody else to mow the lawn because they're so rich and they live in a different universe to the rest of the world. Right?
Right.
But really, I think personally that we all have choices of this nature available to us all the time. And it literally is, like you say, it's a case of what's highest value, what's highest priority. And, you know, sometimes I love getting out on the mower. Like, we live on 2.5 acres, so we get a lot of grass, you know, and we have, a ride-on tractor thing.
Oh, yeah, you got a ride on, though, then, that sounds like.
Yeah, so we sit there.
Oh, yeah, that's different. Yeah, that's a fun ride you're out there.
Like, I'm looking out my office window, and we've got a bank with a bunch of plants on it, and there's this really invasive vine that's taken over and smothering everything. You know, it's kind of like Day of the Triffids out there. So I'm thinking there's definitely some work, and I get to choose. I get to choose, okay, I'm going to spend that time because I want to feel and experience that movement of my body and the satisfaction of doing that work. And I also get to choose, I would rather prioritize spending money to pay somebody else to do that because there's something else I'd like to do. You know, so I think it's a slightly higher order conversation where we really start to execute choice and think about our time as what it is, which is the most precious, non-renewable resource that we have. So, yeah, I really feel like that can be both, but it can also be more a generational thing, you know, rather than an entrepreneur versus employee kind of thing. So, anyway, definitely another one we can, I'm sure, spend another hour digging into, but what I'd love to do, just to draw this to a complete conclusion, is just to sort of, you know, if you were to distill everything you've learned through this adventure of being a dad for the last 5.5 years or so, and being an entrepreneur, right? Like, if you could boil that down to, like, what's one tip for dads to thrive? What would their takeaway be from your perspective? I'd love to hear what you want to share there.
I think it comes down to getting clear about the life you want to create and then living with intention towards that life. I think that's, whether you're a dad or not, but I think that's the best way to do it, you know, with your business, if you're an entrepreneur or not, but get clear on the life that you want and live it intentionally. Otherwise, you're going to just be drifting through life and looking back with the coulda, woulda, shouldas, you know?
Yeah, right. I love that. It's so simple and yet so profound, right? Like, because I think often we have it back to front. We think, okay, I've got to get this job so I can make this money. And then when I make this money and I have this job, then I'll be able to buy the house and the car, and that's when I'll be happy. And then you realize that the work becomes all consuming, and the quest for more, bigger, better, faster, you know, more expensive, more debt, more whatever. You sort of reach a point where you go, hang on a minute. I'm like squeezing little tiny slivers of life out around the rest of my already full, already busy, overcommitted existence. This is not what life's meant to be. And I certainly had my own reckoning of that nature back when I was wiping out with depression, right? So to be able to shift that narrative and go, okay, let's change the story. What's the life we want to live? How do we want to feel when we wake up in the morning? How do we want to fill our days and spend our time? And then let's think outside the box of going, okay, well, what can I do to earn enough money to live the life that I want to live? And like you say, it's chosen intentionally rather than something you fall into by default. Yeah. That's really cool. It's very, very profound. So I think that's a beautiful place to leave it. Todd, I'm so thankful that you put your hand up to join me today. It's been a radical conversation. I loved learning about what tailgating is.
Yeah, this was awesome, man. This was really great.
I loved this discussion about, becoming a dad and shedding those former identities that we used to hold as singles and as couples before we become family men. There's so much in here. So I'm going to go back and take another listen, I think, and really dig into this some more. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for having me. I'm just grateful to hop on and this was an amazing conversation. And like I said, whoever's listening, you were meant to listen to this. Hopefully there were some nuggets in here that can help everybody who heard it.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you so much. And I will put some notes in the show notes if people are interested in the sort of work you're doing right now, Todd. And if they think, I need a guy to help me with my digital marketing and sales strategy, we'll make sure they can reach out and connect up with you if that's something people need or are keen to do. So thank you again. And thank you to everyone listening. We'll see you on the next episode. Thanks so much for joining me on this most recent episode of Dad's Guide to Thrive as part of the Illuminating Lives podcast. I really appreciate you being here, and I would really appreciate if you resonated with this interview, if you wouldn't mind sharing it with the people in your life. Help spread this message, spread these conversations to dads, men, and women everywhere so that we can all be better. Write a comment, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to get notified for the next episode. And please remember that I'm a one-to-one coach and a professional speaker, helping dads in business feel more peace, be more at ease, and feel less stress and be better able to be the parent, husband, and leader in their lives that they want to be. So if you'd like to work with me or have me present to your organization, please contact me via my website or social media channels. The details are all in the description. I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. And in the meantime, may you be happy, may you be healthy, may you be loved, and may you live with ease.